Good morning, fourth grade. Welcome to math class. Today is Monday, April 27th, 2020. For our review / instruction, this week we are going to be continuing our reviewing of long division. However, this week we're going to add something a little bit different that we didn't have in our practice last week. But before we get into that, I want us to do something that we did every single day while we were in class, and that is our application problem. And we remember that the purpose of our application problem is kind of to get our brains into learning mode and to kind of get our brains in gear before we actually get ready to practice or learn something new. So if you don't have a whiteboard, a piece of paper, or a pencil, I want you to pause this video real quick and go grab that so that way you are able to work on the problem when it comes up. So please go do that before moving on to the next part of the video, which is our application problem. So once you have your paper and your pencil or whiteboard or whatever you have to write your problem down with, we have our application problem. Our application problem this week is: the store wanted to put 1,455 bottles of juice into packs of 4. How many complete packs can they make? How many more bottles do they need to make another complete pack? So there's a couple things that we really need to think about and pay attention to in this problem. Obviously, the very first thing that should jump out at all of us are the numbers that we see. So we see that the store has a total of 1,455 bottles. That's how many they have to start out with. And we also know that they want to take those 1,455 bottles and put them into packs of 4. So that means that every single pack is going to have 4, which means that every single pack is going to have an equal number of bottles of juice. So because we know that each of those packs of juice are going to be equal, we can automatically think, wait a second, I know that I need to divide, because that's how I figure out if I have a total and I want to break it up equally. That's what I have to do. I have to divide. So that's the first really big important information that I need from this word problem. Then there's 2 questions that I need to answer. The first question that I need to answer is, how many complete packs can I make? So I know that they want to put 4 bottles of juice in each complete pack. So that means, how many packs of 4 can they make? So that's the first part that I need to figure out. Then there's a second question, 2-part question that I need to figure out. I need to figure out how many more bottles do they need to make another complete pack. So that kind of tells me I'm going to have some left over. I'm going to have a remainder, which means there's not going to be enough to make another complete pack of 4. The question is asking, it's not asking how many are left over. It's asking how many bottles they need to make one more complete pack of 4. So that means whatever my remainder is, I need to figure out how many more bottles I need to make a pack of 4. So what I would like you to do right now is, if you are ready, I would like you to pause this video and take as long as you need to work on this problem and work it out. And when you are finished, you can go ahead and press play, and it will give you the next part of this video. You will see the answer. Remember, we always get in the habit, since we're in 4th grade now, we always get in the habit of putting our answer in a complete sentence. So when you are ready, pause the video And then when you are finished, unpause the video and check your answer. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you were able to take some time to work through our application problem. On this slide, you can see that the very first thing that we have is our tape diagram. Now, this is something that we practice in class. If that's a tool that is helpful to you and that you are able to do it correctly, to help kind of get your brain organized and help you figure out what you have to do, that's great. That's a great tool you can use. If not, it's fine. Don't spend your time worrying about a tape diagram. That's not what I want us to focus on in this lesson. So if you were able to do that and you did that, that's great. If not, that's also great. But here is what your tape diagram would look like if you did make one. Then you can see on our slide, we have our standard algorithm of how we would go about answering this problem. So we would take our 1,455 bottles and we would divide that by 4 because as we remember, they want to put it into packs of 4. So we go through that, we divide it, we see that we are able to make 363 complete packs. But then we notice that there is a remainder. We have 3 left over. The second part of our question asks, how many more bottles do we need to make another complete pack? So we already have 3 left over. How many more bottles am I going to need to make a pack of 4? 4 minus 3, because that's what how many more, that tells us what we have to do. We have to subtract. 4 minus 3 gives us 1. So we know that we need 1 more bottle to make another pack. And like I had said, please, I wanted you to also answer this in a complete sentence. So this is one way that you could have written your sentence. The store can make 363 complete packs. They need 1 more bottle to make another pack. Awesome job, guys. All right, so now we are going, our lesson objective for today is I can solve division problems with a 0 in the dividend or a 0 in the quotient. So as you can see from our lesson objective, it is a little bit different than what we did last week. Last week, we were just straight up practicing division with dividing by 2, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. This week, we are going to have either a 0 in our dividend or there's going to be a 0 in our quotient or our answer. I want us to practice this because if we're not used to it, it can trick us up a little bit. But that's the purpose of practicing, to make sure that we are able to overcome some of these tricky things that we encounter during math class. So before we move on, I want us to just review some of the math vocabulary that we were introduced to and practiced last week and also in class. So as you can see over on the right-hand side of the screen, I have a little anchor chart that kind of drives home and gives examples of what each term or vocabulary word means as you are going through your problem. Our first math vocabulary word is our quotient. And like we remember, that is the answer to a division problem. Our next vocabulary term is divisor. And that's the number that we are dividing by, or how many groups we're dividing into. So as you can see, our example over on the right, our divisor is 32, which is, whoa, don't worry about that. In 4th grade, we do not have to worry about dividing by big numbers like that. That's just our example that we see. Dividend, that is the number that we are dividing, or the total number that we're starting with. So our example right here, our dividend, the number that we're starting with is 487. Then a new vocabulary word that we didn't have or practice last week, but we did practice all the time when we were working on division in class, is remainder. And a remainder is the amount of our dividend that is left over. So as you're going through and as you're dividing, remember sometimes when you get to the very end of your problem, there's some left over that we can't continue dividing because there's not enough to divide it up equally. So that just becomes our remainder. And that's okay if we have a remainder sometimes. Okay, so that was just a quick review of some of our math vocabulary terms. Remember, as you're going through this, I want you to try to practice using those vocabulary terms as much as possible because we want to improve and increase our math vocabulary as much as we can. Okay, so let's get ready to get into our very first problem. So we have our very first problem that we're going to be working through on today's lesson, which is 409 divided by 5. 409 is our dividend, 5 is our divisor. 409 is our dividend, and 5 is our divisor. So as you can see, we have a 0 right in the tens place, right smack dab in the middle of our dividend, which we did not see last week, but that's okay. So step 1, the very first thing that I'm going to do to help me keep myself super organized is to draw lines between each of my place values. So that way when I'm working through my problem, it helps me keep all my work organized and in line and in the correct place value. Because if it's in the wrong place value, if I accidentally put my hundreds into my tens place, I could get the wrong answer and then I would do all that work for nothing. So please make sure that when you're working, you keep all your work very nice and neat and in the right place value. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look and see what my divisor is. How many groups am I going to be dividing my 409 into? And as you can see, I highlighted it's 5. So as we did last week and just like we practiced in class, the 5 is I'm going to take my 5 and I'm going to help me out, write my 5 timetables over to the side, which I did. I started 5 times 1, which equals 5. And I just went down to 5 times 10 equals 50. I just went to 10 just so to make sure that I wouldn't have to go back and add anything to it later in the lesson. So I have all of my 5 times tables. I have all of my multiples of 5 from 5 to 50, and I am ready to start. So we know that when we are dividing, we always start with the greatest place value, which in this case, it's the hundreds. So we have 4 hundreds that we need to split into 5 different groups. But wait a second, my first red flag should be going off. If I only have 4 hundreds, then I need to split into 5 groups. I don't have enough to do that. I can't do that because remember, division, everything has to be equal. So if I can't do that, what do I do? How can I make sure that my groups stay equal? And this is how we do it. So if I can't split any of my hundreds into 5 groups, I can't do that, and that's okay. I'm just going to make sure that I show that in my quotient and through my work that I do by placing a 0. And I put this D over here because that is my first step. I divided. So I don't have any hundreds, and that's okay. Now my next step, I take my 0 into my 5 groups and I figure out how many hundreds did I use, which is my M multiply. I didn't use any because I didn't have enough, and that's okay. So then my next step, I subtract my S, which gives me 4. Okay, so I still have the same number that I started with, but now here's where it changes a little bit. Now I have to bring down the 0 in my tens place, which you can't really see it because of the text box. But here you go. Bring down that 0. So now I took those, basically what I'm showing right here through my work is that I took those 400s that I could not divide up equally, and I decomposed them into 40 tens. I moved them and broke them down from 400s into 40 tens. So when we brought our 0 tens down, we didn't have anything to add to it. Now we are working with 40 tens, which is the same as 400s. So now I'm just focusing and paying attention. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot to say this. As you can see over here, I am starting all the way up at the top with my division. So what I'm going to do is I'm just right now going to focus on those 40 tens that I need to split up evenly and equally into my 5 groups. So what I'm going to do, if I need to, I'm going to look over here at my times tables that I wrote down before I began the problem. And I see that 5 times 8 equals 40. So that means if I have 40 tens and I'm going to split them into 5 groups, I can equally put 8 tens into each group. So if I do that, 8 tens into each group, I just took care of my dividing. Now my next step, I have to multiply. I multiply the 8 that I put in each group times my 5 groups, and that gives me a total of 40. I used up all of my tens, which is great. So that means when I subtract my 40 tens that I started out with minus my 40 tens that I used, I'm left with 0. However, we're not quite finished because we still have 9 ones that we need to divide up evenly and take care of. So we need to bring down our 9 ones, and now that's all that we're focusing on. Now we're going back up to the top with dividing. If I have 9 ones and I divide it into 5 groups, how many ones am I going to put into each group? And if I'm not sure, I can look over here at my times tables, and when I see that if I put 1 in each of the 5 groups, that gives me 5. If I put 2 in each group, I use up 10 ones, which I don't have. I only have 9. So the most that I can put in each group is 1. So I put that on top of my 9 ones. And then I go back to my multiply. And I'm going to multiply my 1 in each group times my 5 groups. And that gives me 5 ones that I used. Then I go to my next step, which is subtraction. And I have 4 left over. Now, if you look up here, I don't have any more place values to bring down, and that's okay. This 4 lets me know that I have a remainder. And sometimes, yes, you do have a remainder because you cannot evenly divide the dividend by the divisor. So then what I do, I bring this remainder 4 all the way up to the top where I wrote the rest of my quotient. And my quotient is 81 with a remainder of 4. And how can we check to make sure that we completed all the steps correctly and we got the right answer? We can multiply. We take our quotient, which is 81, and we multiply it by 5 because that was our divisor. That's how many we broke our dividend into. So when we do that, we start with the ones place. 5 times 1, very easy. We get 5. Then we take our 5 times our 8 tens. 5 times 8 tens is 40 tens. So right now our answer is 405. However, that's not what we started with. We started with 409. So did we do something wrong? Or we forgot that we had a remainder. And what we have to do with our remainder was 4. So we have to take our 405 and add our remainder to it. So then once we add that remainder of 4 to our 405, we get 409. Now we look at that product and I think to myself, is that the total that I started with way back in the beginning when I started my division problem? Is it? It is. So because our 409 matches, it's exactly the same as what we started with in the beginning of our division problem, we know that we did everything correctly. Awesome job. Good job, guys. All right, so now what I want you to do, just like we did in class, I want you to do a little bit of independent. So next up, I would like you to do a little bit of independent practice. And we're going to keep it very similar to the way that we would do it in class. I'm going to give you must-do problems and may-do problems. Now remember, must-do, those are the ones that I want you to complete. And then the may-do problems, those are the ones that if you want more practice, you can work on them. Or if your parents want you to do a little bit more practice, you can work on those problems and get a little bit more practice in. But definitely, I want all of us fourth graders to work on our our must-do problems. So the must-do problems for this lesson is number 5. I want everybody to solve problem number 5, 720 divided by 3. So either on your paper or your whiteboard, show all your work. I also would like you to do your multiplication to check to make sure that you did all of your dividing correctly and you got the correct answer. So that's the first must-do problem. Then the second must-do problem, I'm going to let you decide whether you want to do number 6, 7, or 8. So your must-do problems are number 5, and then either you can decide if you want to do number 6, 7, or 8. Okay? Then, if you want to continue with the may-do part of it, those are just the last 2 problems that you didn't complete for your must-do. So that's what I want you to do when you are finished doing your work. Please make sure, like I said, that you check it using multiplication. That way we're practicing 2 things at once, division and multiplication. You can email it to me or send it to me through Dojo. I want to give a shout out and thank you to those 4th grade friends who sent me their work last week. I was very happy to see those of us who were working on our math, and hopefully next week, or I should say this week, we get a few more friends to show me their work. So that's what I want you to work on right now. Also, don't forget that there are iReady lessons that you can complete. I assigned them last week, and I am very happy to say that I saw a bunch of us who worked on our iReady lessons. If you already did your division practice, that's great. You're done with the iReady division problems. I'm sorry, the division lessons for right now. Those of us who did not finish them, you will have an extra week to work on them. If you did finish them, I just want you to complete the next lesson that iReady assigns to you. Then also, please don't forget that we have a great math resource, Zern.org. All of you have accounts. Some of us have been on, some of us have not. I love this program because it will review and teach you the same way that you have learned in class, and it will go through all of the different strategies for multiplication and division, because right now I have everybody set on multiplication, and as you go through it, then it's going to go straight into division. And I'm going to keep it on multiplication because I want you guys to continue to get that practice in. So if you are able to go on that, please, please, please go on that, because it will give you just that extra little bit of practice and review for math that we've done in class, and hopefully help you guys remember and just give you a little bit extra review. It also has sprints like we did in class for you to go through. It has number gyms. It has a whole bunch of different activities that you can go through to help improve your math skills, and I can see your progress to see how you are performing. So if you need your login, don't forget, I have that, and I keep saying each week, please let me know. I can get that to you ASAP. And last but not least, I just want to remind everybody that we'll be holding the 4th grade Zoom on Wednesday. Hope to see you there. Bye-bye.